Hello, I'm greeting you from the office of Deacon Joe Benedetto. Deacon Joe works here at St. Bernadette. He is a permanent deacon and is deaf himself. Deacon Joe was a teacher in Louisiana for many years, retired, and moved with his family here to Colorado. He loved this beautiful state. And now he works for us, helping to teach sign language class, also to teach religion class, adult Bible study class, and just helping in different ways. The people here at St. Bernadette love to listen to his sermons. Today we will celebrate the second Sunday of Lent. The second Sunday of Lent includes the story called the Transfiguration, meaning Jesus' appearance is changed. The story tells us that Jesus went up the mountain, and on top of the mountain, with his disciples with him, his appearance changed. And the disciples, and especially Peter, tells us this story. With Jesus talking were two people. The first one was Moses, and the second one, the prophet Elijah. And those two represent the Old Testament of the Bible. The Old Testament are the Jewish scriptures, the story of the Jewish people. Moses, the law that is given from God, the Ten Commandments. The prophet Isaiah, representing the rest of the prophecies and stories and teachings that we find in the Old Testament. So the two of them are talking with Jesus, and the message to us is that Jesus summarizes all of them. That the law and the prophets were speaking about Jesus, the Savior, the Messiah. Now, the first reading that we have this morning to accompany with that gospel story is about Abraham. It's the story of Abraham and his son Isaac. You may remember the story. It says that Abraham was told by God to journey up the mountain and there to sacrifice his son. And Abraham, the man of faith, said yes. And he journeys up the mountain. He builds an altar. He takes his son and places him on the altar, ties him up there, and prepares to light the fire. But then the voice of God is heard saying, "No, do not kill your son. You have shown your faith in me." And so then Abraham, trusting in God, looks around and sees a ram, and that is what he sacrificed to God in thanksgiving. The story is difficult to understand why God would ask him to kill his son, but the truth, of course, is God did not want him to kill his son. God wanted Abraham to prove his faith, and he did. And so the story is about faith, trusting God, even though we do not understand. Now, part of this story is that in his life down in the desert, Abraham heard God say to kill his son and sacrifice him. That we could call the loud voice of God. But on the mountain where it's quiet, Abraham heard the real voice of God. And the real voice of God said, "Oh, no, I do not want you sacrificing your son. I love your son just as you love him. And in the promise of the many generations and descendants of Abraham flows through Isaac, his son. So part of the message for us is that there are kind of, in a sense, two voices of God. There's the loud voice and the quiet voice. Or I guess if you were talking about sign language equivalent, there's the loud sign and the small sign. And it's easy to hear the loud sign, the loud voice of God. But that's not the truth. The truth is found in the quiet voice. This same message continues in the gospel story. What might be important to know is right before Jesus went up the mountain that day, right before that, Jesus told his apostles that he was going to Jerusalem and there he would suffer and die. And that's the time when Peter took him and said, "No, Lord, that will not happen to you." Jesus said to him, "Get behind me, you're Satan, you're acting as Satan." In other words, Peter was interrupting Jesus. Peter was not listening to Jesus. Peter was trying himself to be the voice of God, and he was wrong. And this is part of the reason why Jesus led Peter, and James, and John up that mountain, to teach them how to listen to God. In truth, I believe also Jesus himself wanted to have some quiet time for himself so that he could listen to the voice of God. The gospel stories tell us that when Jesus had that experience on the mountain, that from there he journeyed to Jerusalem, and there he died for us. And he was strengthened because of his experience of hearing the voice of the Father who said, "This is my beloved Son." Peter later would write in his letter in the New Testament that he had that experience on the mountain that gave strength to Peter, helped him to understand, so that later on he was able to follow Jesus. Yeah, he denied knowing him, but he was able to reconcile with Jesus and become the leader of the church. Peter learned to listen to God. Now, what does this mean for us in our life? It means that Lent, especially, is a time for listening to God, for paying attention to God's voice, that quiet voice. And so it's important for us sometime during Lent, and preferably often during Lent, to seek out a quiet place. Maybe you'll climb a mountain. I doubt it. But maybe go for a walk, or maybe go for a visit in the church, or just find a place that's quiet, apart from other people, apart from the busyness of life. And there, for listening, to listen to God, to listen to the voice. You know, in all of the Gospels, we hear the voice of the Father only one time. And what God the Father tells us, he says, "This, Jesus, is my beloved Son. Listen. Listen to him." May you, during your Lenten journey, these 6 weeks, find the time to listen to the voice of God. Because that voice will also tell you how precious you are in the sight of God, and will lead you on a path to him. God bless you.